this upcoming season. But the green spaces are critically important, number one, because it's a place for people to come together. I think, when I hear Mayor Luke Bronin talk about his efforts, he talks about One Hartford and our abilities for everybody to come together. And there's a lot of neighborhood pride, which is important in the city, but we all need places to come together. And as I said earlier, to really be able to have that connection to nature. So for kids who are in the city, we know there's some challenges in terms of air quality and some other things. So working with the city of Hartford to plant more trees in places like Colt Park, or Goodwin Park, or the other spots is critically important, because it's actually cleaning the air that our children and families are breathing. But it's also beautiful. Our green spaces should be an enormous source of pride. I love walking through Bushnell Park. I love all the parks in Hartford. There's just so much richness there in terms of what we can do as a gathering place, but then also a place where we can be planting trees to help restore our urban tree canopy. Schools have also been a tremendous partner in those efforts as far as planting trees and improving that air quality. And so the green spaces are a great place to come together, but they're also a resource for producing really good health results for people, whether that's physical activity, being able to green and garden and have access to that fresh produce, which we don't do in the bigger parks, right? But as an example, one of the gardens we're opening this spring is over in Pope Park. So again, that'll be another place where you can do that. So there's a lot of resources in Hartford. Sometimes people just don't talk enough about them. But the other thing is sometimes people don't get out in them enough. So this year, Knox is really excited to be partnering with the city as well as United Way and Comcast to be really focusing on a citywide cleanup. So Knox and the city are going to be focused over 3 days, April 30th, May 1st, and May 2nd, to do a citywide cleanup. We're working with neighborhood groups. We'd love to be working with businesses and anyone who wants to take pride in Hartford. And the goal is really to not just clean up Hartford, but to make sure that people get out to see these spaces for the gems that they are, and that everyone who's driving around Hartford on those days sees that people care, sees that people are coming together, whether it's residents who live in the neighborhood, folks like Susie who work at Aetna, folks who work at Comcast, which is my next stop, that they're all coming out because they care. They recognize the value of these, but they recognize the importance and the value of keeping them looking beautiful.
Might be a little warmer at that time too. That's actually a nice time to be out there and clean up. Everybody's doing their spring cleaning around their houses that time anyway. Let's get out and clean up the city as well.
It will be warmer, and I should say that last day, May 2nd, is sort of the culmination of it. Will culminate on Comcast Cares Day. So Comcast will have a huge outpouring of volunteers on that day. They always have a lot of folks. So it was a great opportunity for me to say, we want to do this citywide cleanup, and then we already know we've got one company who's really committed to coming out in a big way.
When we talk about engaging volunteers for that kind of event, I'll go back to Susie on this as far as, is that kind of a big Aetna day, a lot of employees coming in and helping out? I imagine not only is it helpful to have them out cleaning, the cleanup is helpful itself, but doesn't it also give people an awareness of like maybe what Hartford offers, maybe the people that might not be coming into Hartford normally, gives them a chance to kind of see the resources that we really do have here in the capital city?
Absolutely. I mean, you talk about volunteerism, there are quite a few events throughout the year that Knox puts out there that provides opportunities for Aetna employees to get out there and volunteer, roll up their sleeves a little bit, get in the community, learn about the community that they work in, so that it's not just a city that they drive to, work 9 to 5, and then leave at the end of the day. I mean, you really want to give back to the city that you're working in, right, or the area that you're working in. So yes, multiple volunteer opportunities. We really do take advantage of that. We push our employees at Aetna to get out there and participate in these kinds of events. And I want to go back to something you said earlier that Patrick hit on a little bit, and that was you've talked about, you asked why the partnership, and to add on to that, I would also layer in, if we think about what we're focused on, both of our companies, and what's a barrier that we have in healthcare right now, what's a barrier or a challenge in preventing someone to lead a healthy lifestyle. We talk about social determinants of health often, right? With the priorities that Knox has out there, it really is a good way for Aetna to take a step in the right direction to start to break down those barriers and address those issues.
You guys see, again, not only do you help make us the insurance capital of the world, but you're out there in the community, cleaning up, helping out.
Yeah.
That's actually a really good point. And speaking of the whole health piece, and I'll ask you both, but I'll start with Patrick on this. You mentioned a couple times during this interview produce and the fresh,
Yep.
Some of the fresh food, and how that's maybe that's incorporated into the school system as well. You know, we talk about from a business standpoint, we talk a lot about retaining and attracting talent. You know, we want. I know Susie mentioned it before. You know, you've been in Hartford, you stayed here, which we're really happy about that. And we want these kids, these students, to stay here. But they can't succeed unless they're living a general healthy lifestyle. So they can't be eating garbage, and that's not just in the city. That's everywhere. But talk a little about how that works. So the produce is grown. It's grown here, and then it goes to the schools because these kids need to be eating healthy. That's key.
Yeah, so with our Knox urban farmers, these are folks that we're sharing our resources with, and I think that's a really important piece of Knox's story, is that we're a sharing organization. So, you know, the example of Aetna, you know, gifting us space and saying, you know, here you go, we're sharing this space with Knox so Knox can have a community garden. Knox then turns around and shares that space with the people in the community so that they can grow their fresh produce. With our farmers, we're giving them more support. So they have more land, they have access to greenhouse space at our headquarters, because it's tough to have an agrarian business in Connecticut if you're limited to the outdoor growing season, right? So we're helping to give them those resources and build community, a learning community between all of them, and the Connecticut Department of Agriculture has been super helpful to us in doing that. But we're bringing them together, and then they're the ones growing the produce. They're sitting down with the food director at Hartford Public Schools to figure out what's coming up on the menu and manage the account. We've got it set up pretty well where they're growing at Knox, and they've got a food safe place where they can store what they're harvesting for the school system, and then the school just comes in and basically does their pickup. We have everything tracked so that everything works out in terms of payment going to our farmers, and so that's kind of how we do that. And it's one piece we do to kind of help with folks. You know, you mentioned kind of wanting to really make sure that people who are working here in Hartford really understand all the gifts that Hartford has. We also want all the people who are who started here, who are living here, to make sure that they have access to meaningful employment. And so our farming program is one way we do that. But we also have a workforce development program. So one of the ways we're planting trees and doing the work in our gardens is with volunteers. But our other engine is a green apprenticeship program where we are giving a second chance to Hartford City residents that need it. We're getting them to work in the landscaping industry, so they're developing their skills in an industry where they can grow in their career and where they're likely to have access to those jobs and be able to do it. So in addition to all of the things that we do, we also have some business enterprise with that workforce development program where we can actually do landscaping installations, snow removal. It's been a late season, but you know, we're in Connecticut, it's coming for us at some point, right? And those are all things that businesses can hire out to Knox and contract just like they would any other landscaping company. The difference is when Knox is doing that work, we're able to reinvest the results, the wins from that business enterprise into supporting our core mission and our mission work. So it's something that you'll look great, but you can also really feel good knowing that you're contributing to Hartford in that way.
Now you talked about the seasons obviously here, and unfortunately we are somewhat limited when we can be outside, you know, cultivating this. But you do have an event coming up also on the 21st of this month, the Knox Greenhouse Party.
Absolutely.
Which just the name sounds fun, a greenhouse party. But tell us a little bit about that, what it is, and how can people attend, and what's kind of the purpose of that event.
Yeah. So the event is really for Knox. It's a fundraising event, but it's really an opportunity to come together and celebrate all the work we're doing. And one of the unique assets that we as Knox have, right, is we've got these greenhouses in the middle of the city. So when it's February, you want to come into a place with beautiful plants and 75 degrees, we've got that. So we were actually very fortunate. We had a number of nurseries that donated some plant materials to us at the end of the season, and one of them donated these really beautiful tropical plants. And so we've decided this year we're gonna we're gonna live the theme of the rainforest. So we're gonna have a night in the rainforest on the 21st. We've got these beautiful tropical plants, but we're also working with Ann Cubberly, who's the artist that does Nightfall, to really transform that space into a rainforest. So it's gonna be a lot of fun. It's a pretty reasonable price. We mentioned hype earlier. This is an event that typically lots of hype members come to because it's a lot of fun and a way to celebrate what's happening in the city. Food and drink is included in the price of the ticket. And more importantly, it's a great opportunity to come to learn about the efforts of lots of people across Hartford to really make sure people have access to fresh food, make sure folks who need a second chance and need employment are getting it, and then making sure that we're building a more sustainability with good green infrastructure and those great spaces where we can come together.
A week after Valentine's Day, so it could be a good Valentine's Day gift. Buy tickets for that.
It would be a great Valentine's Day.
That sounds like a nice evening out right there. That sounds great. You're listening to Pulse of the Region, brought to you by the Metro Hartford Alliance. We have Patrick Doyle from Knox Inc. and Susie Cedar from Aetna talking about the green spaces in the city, the sustainability, and we're starting to wind down a little bit here, but I do want to ask you both as far as kind of the next steps, the future of Knox, and you're doing a great job, and it seems like there's unlimited amounts of work for you to do, which makes it even more incredible that you were able to take the time to be with us today. But what's kind of the future? What are kind of like the next steps? I mean, it sounds like there's a lot going on now, but how do you continue to keep this process moving forward for the city?
Well, we really appreciate the opportunity to come on today and talk to folks, and so thank you for having us. And so what I would say the first thing is we need to make sure that people know it, right? And we really, as I look to 2020, to really make sure that we're doing a good job, not just doing this work, but doing it in a way that's visible, that people see it. And one of the reasons that's important is because we want to engage people, we want to empower people, we want to see the people who are in the city coming together, and we're not going to do that if nobody knows what it is we're doing. So that's why, as an example, we looked toward the citywide cleanup. We've always had tools and resources to help volunteer groups go out and beautify the city, but this is doing it in a different way that's much more visible and hopefully going to get a little bit better impact over those days and let people know, hey, we're here, we're doing this. Take pride in your city, take pride in cleaning up. And so in the year ahead, the organization has gone through a lot of transition. Tip of my cap to my predecessor, Ron Pitts, who was with the organization for over 25 years and just built a force. But as you can imagine, with a leader that's been in an organization for 25 years, transitions can be, it can take it out of some folks. So there's a lot of, not concern, but I think there's a lot of folks looking at me when I started to say, what are you going to change? What's going to be different? And what I quickly saw is what we're doing here is good. What we're doing here has value, and everything that Knox does supports the other pieces of what Knox does. And so it's not about change, it's about naming what it is that we're doing and looking to 2020 as a year where we can do more of it, where we can get better results, where we can grow more produce, where we can make sure more families are in our gardens able to grow produce for themselves and to share with their friends and family. So as I look forward, it's really making sure everyone's able to take advantage of those resources and that we're just seeing the results start to grow.
You really got to do it. I'm not just saying that because I know you. You really got to do it. I know that. And as far as Aetna's engagement, Susan, I want to ask you, as far as keeping the employee base at Aetna and the company engaged in this work, and again, there are a lot of different causes and charities and community initiatives out there that people can get involved with. But how does Aetna intend to keep your employees engaged in this kind of work going forward?
Well, I think well said by Patrick earlier, and this guy right here. I think particularly the efforts that Patrick are leading here with the organization and continuing these strong partnerships with Aetna. Folks like myself from Aetna who do sit on the board as an acting board member. I really think drawing that connectivity through doing that kind of partnership in my seat on the board really helps that, and continuing to drive the message home on what Knox does and its purpose, getting its name out there, continuing to get its name out there, and again, the passion that the Aetna employees have, why they come to work every day, why they do what they do and are in the industry and working at Aetna really aligns to what Knox is putting forward out there. And there is a need in this community for Knox, and getting that message out of how we can achieve that, I think, gets that continuous support. We all really need to lean in and partner and support this effort.
Well, we appreciate everything that Aetna does. As I said, a tremendous investor with the Alliance, a great partner of ours every day. So we appreciate that. And as we sort of wrap up here, Patrick, I want to ask you, anyone who's listening or watching, how can people get engaged? I know you're always obviously looking